please have a seat first, sir? I'll go and get the manager at once." The staff did a 180 in terms of his attitude toward Jared when he glimpsed the bank card in the man's hand. "Okay." Nodding, Jared took a seat at the side while the staff hastily went to get the manager. Delilah was baffled at that turn of events, and she couldn't quite figure out why the bank staff became so courteous toward Jared out of the blue. "Do you really have 10 million, Jared?" she asked Jared skeptically after seeing the staff's sudden change in attitude. "What has that got to do with you?" Jared sneered. "Jared, let me tell you that forging a bank card is a crime. How could you possibly have 10 million when you're an ex-convict? Don't think I'm unaware that your family is still living in that old neighborhood and your father is currently sweeping the streets. How could you have 10 million? Of course, Delilah didn't believe that he truly had 10 million. If he really has that much money, would he still be living in that crappy neighborhood? Besides, he had just gotten out of prison, so he can't possibly have made 10 million in a few days. Ha! He must be deliberately putting on a show in front of me, thus saying that to fool me. When the other customers in the bank heard her remark, they all cast curious glances at Jared. These days, all cash withdrawals are made via bank cards, and a simple check will tell whether there's money in the card. There can't be someone so foolish as to forge a bank card, no? Shortly after, the bank staff who had just left returned with a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was wearing glasses and seemed to be in a hurry. "Hello, sir. I'm the bank manager. How may I help you?" the middle-aged man inquired politely after walking over to Jared. "I'd like to withdraw 1.3 million, but I don't have an appointment. Can I still make the withdrawal?" While speaking, Jared handed the bank card to the bank manager. The moment the bank manager saw the card, his expression changed slightly. "Sure. You don't need to make an appointment, sir. However, we presently don't have that much cash on hand. I'll have someone deliver some money over from other branches right away. Please adjourn to my office while you wait, sir." Jared nodded and got up to head to the man's office to wait. Seeing that, Delilah was entirely dumbfounded. She stepped forward and blocked the bank manager's path, screeching, "What's wrong with this bank? Why can he make a withdrawal when he doesn't have an appointment? He's merely an ex-convict, and you just agreed without even checking whether there's any money in his bank card. If that's the case, I also want to withdraw 1 million right now." After having bellowed at the man, she turned to her boyfriend and urged, "Let's also make a withdrawal of 1 million, darling." Braden strode over and swept his gaze over Jared. Then, he whipped out a bank card and handed it to the bank manager. "There's likewise 10 million in this card, and I also want to withdraw 1 million now." Alas, the bank manager didn't even spare it a glance, merely replying placidly, "I'm sorry, but that's not possible without an appointment." That answer had Delilah flipping her lid. "Argh, he clearly has double standards. Jared can withdraw money without an appointment when he has 10 million in his bank card. Our bank card also has 10 million, yet we need to make an appointment? What kind of crappy bank is this? I want to lodge a complaint. Why do we need an appointment when he doesn't need one? We also have 10 million in the bank card. Didn't you hear that?" She roared at the bank manager. "This gentleman is a supreme VIP client of this bank, so he doesn't need an appointment. You both, on the other hand, are merely ordinary clients. As such, there's no comparison," the bank manager explained indifferently. Upon hearing that, Delilah almost burst a blood vessel. She shot daggers at the man. "He's a supreme VIP client? Are you making a mistake here? He's merely an ex-convict who had just been released from prison." "This gentleman's bank card is a customized card issued to the Sullivan family. We only acknowledge the card and not the person. Do you think the two of you can compare with the Sullivan family?" A glimmer of contempt flitted across the eyes of the bank manager. His words stunned Delilah for a moment, while the people around them exclaimed in awe. After all, the Sullivan family was the wealthiest family in Horrington. As such, it was no wonder that the staff earlier changed his attitude instantly when he glimpsed the bank card in Jared's hand. When one had a bank card issued to the Sullivan family, the bank would even send someone to personally deliver the money with a single phone call, much less coming to the bank in person to make a withdrawal. All banks competed among themselves for such a client. The instant Braden heard that Jared was in possession of a customized bank card issued to the Sullivan family, he went as pale as a sheet. Crap. If he's really associated with the Sullivan family, my small company will go bankrupt with a single word from him. That's impossible. How could he have a customized card issued to the Sullivan family? He must have stolen it or picked it up somewhere. He can't possibly have anything to do with the Sullivan family. Still, Delilah didn't believe it. Jared is just an ordinary person, and he has just gotten out of prison. How could he be associated with the Sullivan family? When the bank manager saw that she was still making a scene, his expression went chilly. "Security! Throw them out of here!" In no time, 2 security guards marched over and kicked Delilah out. Even Braden was given the boot. What exactly is going on here? What does that former classmate of yours have to do with the Sullivan family? Braden questioned worriedly. I've never heard of him having anything to do with the Sullivan family. If he really had some kind of association with them, he wouldn't have gone to prison. How could he have hooked up with them in the mere few days he was released? If you ask me, I think he must have picked that bank card up somewhere. This bank manager is an utter idiot. Delilah snapped, with fury written all over her face. All right, don't bother about that anymore. Let's go. Braden didn't want to get embroiled in the matter, since he would be up a creek without a paddle if Jared were really acquainted with the Sullivan family. Shortly after Delilah and her plump boyfriend exited the bank, the few people who had been waiting for Jared outside spotted them and rushed over. What a coincidence, Mr. Quigley. I didn't expect to meet you here, the man wearing a gold chain exclaimed, grinning from ear to ear. Ah, it's you, Steele. Why are you guys here? Braden asked. Someone owes us money, so we're waiting for him to withdraw the money, Steele answered mildly. I see. Well, all the best. I've still got something to do, so let's have a drink sometime. After saying that, Braden made to leave while dragging Delilah along. The few men weren't the decent sort, so he didn't want to have too much interaction with them. Unexpectedly, Delilah refused to budge, but queried in surprise. Is the person owing you money named Jared? Jared? Steele was startled for a while, but he promptly came around. Yeah, his name is Jared, if I'm not mistaken. He owes us $1.3 million. When Delilah heard that, she was thrilled to the point that she almost jumped for joy. I was just wondering why he insisted on withdrawing $1.3 million today. It turns out that he owes someone money and has to pay off his debt. Scoffing, she turned to Steele and inquired, How did he come to owe you money? This time Steele didn't answer her but glanced at Braden instead. Braden flashed him a smile. This is my girlfriend. Steele chuckled as soon as he heard that. Since you're Mr. Quigley's girlfriend, I'll be frank with you. It was a woman who took out a loan from us. He's helping her to pay it off, so it actually isn't his debt. Oh, I see. In that case, you can ask him for more in interest. He has $10 million in his bank card, Delilah whispered to him. $10 million? Steele was stupefied before a flash of glee showed on his face. Does he really have $10 million? He doesn't seem rich. At his dubiousness, Delilah hurriedly asserted, Why would I lie to you? He said it himself in the bank earlier. If he really manages to withdraw $1.3 million later, it'll prove that there's indeed money in his bank card. That makes sense. Steele nodded in agreement. All right, that's enough. I've still got something to do, so let's go. Braden tugged at Delilah hard. What are you afraid of? Let's just wait here for a while and leave when Jared comes out later. I want to see whether he really has $10 million. Delilah shook him off hard. I'm not leaving. I still want to witness his humiliation later. Having no other choice, Braden could only stand there and wait. 10 minutes later, Jared walked out with a massive bag filled with cash. When Steele caught sight of him with the enormous bag in hand, he immediately stalked up to the man with the rest of the men. Seeing that, Delilah hurried over as well, eager to see whether Jared had withdrawn the money for real. Jared was a tad surprised that she hadn't left, but he didn't pay it much mind either. Where's the money, kid? Steele demanded. In response, Jared tossed the bag in his hand onto the ground, revealing the bills in there. The moment Steele's lackeys saw the stacks of bills, greed crept into their eyes. Delilah was also rather astonished. $1.3 million is all here, not a single cent less, Jared replied evenly. Steele's lackey swiftly rushed forward to grab the money, but Steele stopped him. Kid, I'm afraid that $1.3 million isn't sufficient. While he too wanted to snatch the money, he wished to extort more out of Jared after learning that he had $10 million. What do you mean? Jared frowned. Nothing much. I miscalculated the interest earlier. Now the principal and interest total up to $2 million, Steele declared, the corners of his mouth turning up a fraction. At once, Jared's expression turned frosty, and murder blazed in his eyes. Don't you have $10 million, Jared? What's $2 million to you? Just go back in and withdraw the remainder, Delilah drawled as she eyed him gloatingly. Ignoring her altogether, Jared said to Steele, Here's $1.3 million. If you don't want it, I'm going to redeposit it into the bank. Then, he bent down to retrieve the money to redeposit it into the bank. Kid, this money isn't yours anymore, so you can't touch it. Steele lifted his leg and stepped on the bag. Meanwhile, the two lackeys at the side quickly reached out and grabbed Jared's shoulder to restrain him. But to their surprise, they couldn't move him even an inch, no matter how much force they exerted. Jared's eyes glinted coldly, and he clutched their wrists. With a light squeeze, the sound of bones shattering split the air. In the blink of an eye, the two lackeys howled in agony. How dare you make a move against my men? You must have a death wish. When Steele saw that, his expression darkened, and he shot his leg out at the man. Kill him! Finish him off! Delilah cheered at the top of her lungs as elation suffused her upon seeing that. Pow! But just when Steele lifted his leg, Jared's leg shot out and landed on the man, sending him flying back. On the heels of that, Jared twisted his hands. The two lackeys' arms instantly snapped like a twig, and they let out a tormented wail. By then, only one lackey was left standing. When he saw that things were going downhill, he was so terrified that he turned tail. After all, there was no loyalty among ruffians. Jared slowly stalked toward Steele. Right then, the latter's face was drained of all color, and he felt as though someone was carving him up from within. Chapter 74. When Steele saw Jared moving toward him, he struggled to get to his feet, but the pain was so excruciating that he couldn't do so. That kick from Jared was just too powerful. What are you trying to do? Let me tell you that I'm from the Crimson Dragon Gang, and our gang leader is none other than Stephen Fisher. The man's grim expression petrified him so greatly that he hastily mentioned the Crimson Dragon Gang. However, Jared sneered. Stephen, huh? If you hadn't said that you're from the Crimson Dragon Gang, I might have spared you. Alas, you don't have that opportunity anymore. Right after saying that, he stomped on Steele's legs and shattered them to the point that he could never walk again, no matter how skillful the doctor was. Ah! Sheer agony had Steele screaming at the top of his lungs, even as he writhed on the ground. Terror struck Delilah when she saw Jared's ruthless methods and chilly expression. She trembled incessantly, her eyes brimming with horror. Likewise, Braden had also broken into a cold sweat, his knees knocking together. Picking up the money from the ground, Jared threw Delilah a glacial look. That mere glance scared her so much that she collapsed to the ground in fright. At the sight of her pathetic condition, Jared snorted and strode right into the bank to redeposit the money. When he arrived home, he saw that Hilda and Chloe were still there. As soon as Hilda spotted Jared, she frantically rushed over to him. She was on the verge of asking him how things went when she abruptly remembered that her mother was still there. Thus, she said nothing. "Where did you go, Jared? Hilda has been waiting for you the entire day," Hannah chastised when she heard his return. "Go out for a walk with her and chat for a bit." "I had to handle something, Mom," Jared explained. "Mrs. Chance, I'll be going out for a walk with Jared then." Hilda strode out while dragging Jared along. At that second, She couldn't wait to know how he handled the matter. "Sure, go ahead. Go and talk for a while, and we'll all have lunch here later." Hannah nodded happily. After Jared had left with Hilda, she remarked with a delighted expression, "Mrs. Wallace, I think they both seem to make a pretty good match." "I'm of the same opinion." "Ha ha." Chloe laughed as well. "What did they do to you, Jared? Did they beat you up?" Hilda questioned urgently the instant they left the house. "Nope. Anyway, you don't have to worry about the loan anymore. It's settled now. In the future, find a decent job and work hard. I'm going for an interview tomorrow, and I'll recommend you there if the company is okay. Next time, you've got to be more discerning when getting yourself a boyfriend," Jared urged with a smile. Hilda nodded with adoration in her gaze as she stared at Jared, but he didn't look at her. He merely regarded her as a sister and had no romantic feelings for her, so he didn't want her to misunderstand. While they were strolling around the neighborhood, Jared's phone suddenly rang. It was a call from Josephine. "Where did you and your family go, Jared? Why aren't you all at Dragon Bay anymore? I asked the security and he said that you moved out?" Josephine went over to Dragon Bay in search of Jared, only to discover that he no longer lived there. "My parents weren't quite used to living there, so we moved back. Although the area is a bit old, they have more neighbors here who are all acquaintances." In truth, Jared lied because he had no idea why his parents wanted to leave Dragon Bay. "I see," Josephine murmured in acknowledgement, her disappointment clear as day. After chatting for a while longer, Jared hung up the phone. "Was that your girlfriend, Jared?" Hilda asked softly when the man had finished talking on the phone. Jared froze, not quite sure how he should answer that question. In all honesty, he himself didn't know whether Josephine was considered his girlfriend when they had never confirmed their relationship officially. Noticing his hesitation, Hilda chuckled. "Never mind if you don't want to answer that. It's fine." Jared merely flashed her a smile without saying anything. When they had strolled around for some time, they both went back for lunch. Meanwhile, Leighton was lounging on the hospital bed in Horrington Hospital lazily. He wanted to go home instead of staying at the hospital, but his father disagreed and insisted that he recuperate at the hospital. After all, it wasn't a problem even if he were to stay at the hospital for a year, considering the Scott family's financial capability. While he was expiring in boredom, the hospital room door was pushed open, and Sandy sashayed in with a lunchbox in hand. "I've got good news for you, Leigh," Sandy crowed the second she stepped into the room. "What is it?" Leighton inquired. "Jared has been kicked out of Dragon Bay. Perhaps he had a falling out with Josephine," Sandy announced excitedly. "Why so?" Leighton was similarly ecstatic. If he loses the protection of the Sullivan family, he'll be absolutely nothing. Then, I can crush him any time. Why else could it be? I suppose Josephine has gotten sick of him. She must have been just toying with him. How could she have really fallen for him when they're not of equal standing at the end of the day? Early this morning, the security at Dragon Bay said that his parents left with their luggage and returned to their old neighborhood, Sandy stated. Hearing that, Leighton guffawed. "Ha ha, that's great. I'm going to deal with him when I've recovered. I'll make his life a living hell." Early the following morning, Franklin called to inform that he had already instructed Maria to pick Jared up to go to the latter's office together. When Gary heard that, he quickly urged Jared to get out of bed. "You've got to make a good impression today, Jared. This is a huge company, so your future will be secure if you manage to get a job there and work your way up to be a department manager or the like," he reminded. "Got it, Dad." Nodding, Jared snagged a shirt and slipped it on. However, Gary frowned. "How could you wear that when you're going for an interview? Wear a suit and make it quick." "I don't have a suit, Dad." Jared wasn't in the habit of wearing suits, so he never bought any. At that precise moment, Hannah walked over and retorted, "Nonsense, of course you do. Have you forgotten that you bought a suit 3 years ago for your wedding?" But in the end, speaking of that, she hastily zipped her mouth. Jared was going for an interview that day, so she didn't want to bring up the past. Soon, Jared put on the suit he bought 3 years ago. While it had been some years, it was still very new since he had never worn it. "My son sure is handsome in a suit. All the best." Gary patted Jared on the shoulder. "Jared, come over here and let me touch you." As Hannah couldn't see, she could only use her hands to sense Jared's appearance as he wore a suit. Below their house right then, a red BMW was parked in front of the neighborhood. Standing before the front of the car, Maria eyed the dilapidated buildings in revulsion. "What kind of crappy place is this? It stinks to high heaven. Is this really fit for residence?" She frowned and pinched her nose even as she continued grumbling. "I truly don't know what Dad was thinking when he asked me to come and pick him up." While muttering, she glanced at her watch every so often. Right then, she was dressed professionally with her long and creamy legs on display, snagging the attention of many. Nonetheless, she wore an expression of contempt and looked down on all who walked out of the neighborhood. After waiting for a while without any sign of Jared, she phoned Gary. Chapter 76. Maria had previously asked Franklin for Gary's number. When the latter answered, she rudely snapped, "Do you know the time now? How much longer do you want me to wait? You don't even care about punctuality. Don't forget that it's your family begging me for a favor. Yet you want me to wait?" She hung up right after saying that without giving Gary any chance to respond. Meanwhile, Gary was stunned for a long while after the phone conversation ended. Embarrassment showed on his face, and he felt chagrined at having been lectured by the young Maria at his age. But recalling that Jared had to depend on her to recommend him a job, he endured the humiliation. "Who was that on the phone, Dad?" Jared queried. "It was Maria. She's already waiting downstairs, so hurry up and go down. Remember to speak nicely to her." Gary started urging him to go downstairs. After Jared went downstairs, he saw Maria waiting at the entrance. Hence, he went over to her and murmured apologetically, "I'm sorry to have kept you waiting." The moment Maria spotted him, she promptly barked with fury etched on her face. "If it weren't for my father's orders, I wouldn't have come to pick you up. Look at your dressing. What era is that suit from? How dated?" Jared's brows furrowed slightly, but he suppressed his anger and explained, "I bought it 3 years ago, but I've never worn it, so it's still new." "New my foot. No young man in this era would wear such an old-fashioned suit." Maria curled her lips derisively. "Then, should I go back up and change?" Jared questioned. "Forget about it. There's no time for that when it's already late now. Hurry up and get into the car." Maria opened the car door with a frosty expression and climbed into the car unceremoniously. Jared wanted to sit in the passenger seat, but Maria snarled at him when he opened the car door. "Sit in the back! Do you think you're worthy of sitting in the passenger seat?" At that, Jared frowned again, though he did as ordered and slipped into the back seat. Without even waiting for him to settle, Maria floored the gas pedal. It was fortunate that he knew martial arts, or he would have slammed into the front seat. "Remember that you can't mention anything about being acquainted with me when we arrive at the office. Also, I don't care whether you pass the interview. Don't expect me to help you either. It's already benevolent of me to recommend you for an interview." Maria rambled on and on during the drive, mainly forbidding him from saying that he knew her because she was afraid that he would embarrass her. "Okay." Jared merely gave her a placid one-worded reply. In no time, they arrived at Maria's company. It was a corporate group with more than a dozen floors in the entire building. "Sentiment Chemical Limited? This company belongs to the Sullivan family?" Jared stared at the gigantic signboard of the company with his head lifted, a frown marring his countenance. "If my memory serves, Sentiment Chemical Limited belongs to the Sullivan family. I remember Josephine saying that William established it on her birthday as a birthday gift for her." Indeed, Josephine was the chairman and legal person of that company. However, she didn't participate in its management and rarely visited the office. "Yes, this company belongs to the Sullivan family, the wealthiest family in Horrington. It's a great honor to be able to secure a job here. The pay and benefits are far better than other companies," Maria declared proudly. Jared merely smiled without commenting further. He then followed her into the building. As soon as they reached the entrance, they saw a tall and handsome young man in a suit standing by the door. That was none other than Maria's boyfriend, Zane Carlson. Why are you so late today, Maria? When Zane caught sight of Maria, he immediately went up to her with a bright smile. Ugh, did you have to remind me of that? My father asked me to pick up his comrade's son, so I'm running a bit behind. Maria pouted, making it clear that she wasn't in that great a mood. Zane cast a look at Jared behind Maria, upon which a glimmer of disdain flashed across his eyes. Then he took Maria's hand and started striding forward. Jared could only trail behind them while Zane and Maria whispered among themselves. If you don't want him to work here, I'll just fail him during the interview later. Anyway, I'm doing the interview today, Zane murmured. Don't make it too obvious, otherwise my father is going to take me to task again if he complains to his father. He had just gotten out of prison, so turn him down on that basis, Maria instructed in hushed tones, leaning close to his ear. They were afraid that Jared would hear them, but unbeknownst to them, Jared caught the entirety of their conversation. After all, his hearing was far superior to the average person then. Behind them, the man chuckled coldly. I don't give a whit whether I can pass the interview. I'm just going through the formalities. When they had reached the floor where the sales department was located, Maria pointed at Zane and said to Jared, Go with him. And remember what I told you. Don't tell anyone here that you're acquainted with me. Jared nodded in acknowledgement before following Zane to the office where the interview would be held. By then, a crowd was already waiting outside, all there for an interview. Since it was a corporate group, it paid well and offered great benefits. For that reason, many people wanted to join the company, including graduates from prestigious universities. Wait outside. Someone will call you later. Zane strode into the office after saying that. Jared, on the other hand, plopped down onto a chair. Are you here for an interview as well, bro? A bespectacled young man sitting beside him asked. Yeah, Jared nodded. Which university did you attend? I know many of the interviewees this time are graduates from renowned universities. Look at that girl in a dress. I heard that she's from Quartz University. Meanwhile, that man with a backpack graduated from Moana University. The young man jabbered with envy written all over his face. I attended Bay Coast Business School. Jared flashed him a faint smile. Taken aback, the young man exclaimed, You're a graduate from Bay Coast? I really laud your courage for coming here for an interview when you attended that institute. It's even worse than me being from Blue Sky Vocational School. The look in the young man's eyes was smug when he gazed at Jared. Finally, I found someone whose academic qualifications are beneath me. Jared merely smiled without saying anything. Right that moment, a young lady in professional attire walked over and said to everyone, Please hand me your resumes. Later I'll call you for the interview according to order. Upon hearing that, everyone swiftly submitted their meticulously prepared resumes. Only Jared sat there motionlessly. Excuse me, sir, but where's your resume? The young lady inquired when she noticed Jared's inaction. I didn't prepare a resume, Jared answered nonchalantly. A flash of surprise flittered across the young lady's eyes when she heard that, but she then asked, May I know your name then? It's so that I know how to address you later. My name is Jared Chance, Jared replied. Nodding, the young lady spun around and walked into the office. Everyone eyed Jared as though he was an idiot. How could he possibly be recruited when he's wearing such a dated suit and failed to even prepare a resume for the interview? Only the young man who had been talking to him regarded him strangely. Out of the blue, he whispered, Do you have connections here, thus going through the back door, bro? Jared was startled, at a loss as to why he was asking such a question. You must be going through the back door, otherwise, why wouldn't you have prepared a resume? Also, I could tell at a single glance that the person who brought you here earlier is a high-ranking executive in the office. No wonder you're so calm. With an ingratiating smile on his face, the young man took out a box of chewing gum from his pocket and offered it to him. Jared accepted it without hesitation and threw a piece into his mouth. Bro, if you really have connections, do you mind putting in a good word for me? If I'm hired, I'll treat you to a meal at a hotel. The young man gazed at Jared expectantly. In response, Jared chuckled softly. Sure. If I get the job, I'll put in a good word or two for you. Thank you, thank you. You're too kind." The young man kept thanking him, his face shining with exhilaration. Shortly after, the interview started. Interviewees after interviewees entered the office nervously, only to walk back out despondently. Even those few from prestigious universities didn't manage to get the job. When the young man beside Jared saw that the graduates from the renowned universities had failed, he grew all the more apprehensive. His hands curled into loose fists, and his palms grew damp with sweat. Next, Jared Chance. Jared's turn came in no time. When Jared stood up, the young man beside him abruptly grabbed him. "You've got to put in a good word for me, bro. I'm pinning my hopes on you," he implored anxiously. Jared nodded before stepping into the office. The instant he did so, he was greeted by the sight of 3 people sitting behind a table, and the young lady who collected their resumes earlier, standing at the side. Zane sat in the middle, making it abundantly clear that he was the chief interviewer that day, while the men on both sides of him were only sitting in. In other words, a single word from the former determined whether one passed the interview. Looking at Jared, Zane ordered with a calm and unruffled gaze, "Please introduce yourself." Just as Jared was about to speak, one of the interviewers sitting beside Zane chimed in, "As you have no resume, you have to tell us about your working experience after graduating from university." Nodding in acquiescence, Jared briefly spoke of his working experience after graduating. Of course, he also told them about him having been to prison. He didn't hide anything, nor was there anything to hide. Surprisingly, none of them were astonished when he admitted to being an ex-convict. The reason for that was plain as day. Zane had told them about it earlier. After listening to him, Zane closed his eyes and crossed his arms as he reclined in his chair, uttering nary a word. Seeing that, the young lady at the side hurriedly stepped forward and massaged him gently. "Do you know what company this is? And are you aware of who the owner is? You're just an ex-convict who had just gotten out of prison, yet you dare come here for an interview," one of the interviewers drawled with a bark of derisive laughter. "Why not? Is there a policy in this company stipulating that people who had been to prison can't come here for an interview? Besides, what's the huge deal about that? Is an ex-convict necessarily evil?" Jared countered with a faint smile. "While there isn't such a policy, you will affect our company's image if you join us, since you're an ex-convict. I believe that other companies won't employ someone who served a prison sentence like you either. You'd best have some self-awareness. If I were in your shoes, I would be too ashamed to leave the house." The interviewer eyed Jared smirkingly. It seemed that he was deliberately humiliating the latter. That aside, his voice was particularly resounding. As a result, the interviewees outside could hear every word loud and clear. They were all surprised. The young man talking to Jared earlier in particular was deeply shocked. "Damn it, it turns out that he's an ex-convict. That was a waste of my chewing gum. What bad luck." He then quickly rushed to the restroom to wash his hands. In the office, Jared didn't get up in arms. Instead, he riposted smilingly, "If I were in your shoes and couldn't get it up at all, I would be too ashamed to sit here. You've got dark circles under your eyes. Did you have a sleepless night because you couldn't do anything though your wife was right next to you?" The interviewer jolted upon hearing that, and he stared at the man with horror in his eyes. "I don't get it. How did he know that I'm impotent? That's my secret, and I've never told anyone about it. In other people's eyes, I have the perfect family, in addition to a loving relationship with my wife. Only I myself know that I'll plunge into deep despair whenever night falls." The interviewer went through the roof, the veins on his forehead popping out as Jared struck a raw nerve. "Nonsense. You're the one who can't get it up. I've got a wife and a child, and we're a happy family," he bellowed. He purposely emphasized having a child as a comeback to prove that Jared was spouting nonsense. In response, Jared snickered. "Even if you have a child, that isn't your biological offspring. You either adopted or your wife got pregnant from another man, because you've been impotent ever since childhood. Furthermore, it's a result of an accident, so you became impotent due to external forces. Bam! Right after Jared's words rang out, the interviewer slammed his hand on the table and shot to his feet. Shooting daggers at the man, he snarled, "You had me investigated, kid?" Indeed, it was because he was kicked in the crotch by a donkey when he was a child that he became impotent. In truth, he merely adopted a child after getting married. No one in Horrington knew about that, other than those in his hometown. For that reason, he intentionally stayed away from his hometown. Unexpectedly, Jared exposed everything that day. "You're not worthy to have me investigate you," Jared scoffed. However, the interviewer's question also confirmed that Jared was speaking the truth. All at once, his colleagues there regarded him with a peculiar look in their eyes. The interviewer seemingly realized his slip of the tongue and immediately went ballistic, gearing up to charge at Jared. Seeing that the interview was about to turn into a fight, Zane roared, "That's enough! Sit back down!" The interviewer shot Jared a glare before he plopped back into his seat. Zane merely wanted his subordinates to insult Jared for a bit, before he informed the man that he wasn't suitable for the position. He never expected things to end up in such a mess. Thus, fury deluged him. "Kid, you're not suited to work in this company. In fact, you're not even qualified to be a security guard outside the entrance. Therefore, please leave and don't come back in the future," the other interviewer chastised when he noticed the rage staining Zane's face. "This is a big company, yet there are awful employees such as the lot of you. There really should be a restructuring." With a sneer, Jared got to his feet and strode out. After all, he didn't really want to work there anyway. But a mere second after he stood up to leave, a tall and aloof young man in a suit walked in. The young man exuded authority, and he swept his gaze over Jared as soon as he entered the room. Jared glanced at him as well, but continued walking out. Unexpectedly, the young man stopped him. "You're Jared Chance?" Jared studied him in slight puzzlement, nodding slightly. He had no idea who the man was, but if his parents were there, they would certainly recognize him as the man who went to Dragon Bay and kicked them out back then. "Mr. Jennings?" Zane instantly trotted over ingratiatingly when he saw the man, explaining, "This is Jared Chance. He's here to apply for a job, but we turned him down because he doesn't match our company's requirements." "Employ him." After saying that, the young man scrutinized Jared once more before he whirled around to leave. "Mr. Jennings? But he's an ex-convict who had just gotten out of prison," Zane protested. The young man slowly turned around and stared at him icily. "Are you trying to teach me how to do things?" Terror struck Zane when he heard that, and he shook his head profusely. No. Chapter 80. The young man spun on his heels and left. Meanwhile, Zane and the other two interviewers were all stumped, gaping at Jared incredulously. They couldn't figure out how the man got acquainted with their general manager. "How did you get to know Mr. Jennings?" Zane demanded, with mystification written all over his face. "Is he some high-ranking executive here? Perhaps the general manager? I don't know him." Jared shook his head in denial. He wasn't acquainted with that young man, nor had he ever seen him. On the contrary, that young man had seen him before, and even witnessed him being all touchy-feely with Josephine. The young man was named Xavier Jennings, and he graduated from Silverleaf University abroad. After joining Sullivan Group, he advanced through the ranks. He also fancied Josephine and had been pursuing her, but the latter wasn't interested in him. After William gifted the company to Josephine, he transferred Xavier over to Sentiment Chemical Limited to be the general manager, putting him in charge of the operation and management of the company since Josephine didn't want to oversee things. Xavier indeed had some capabilities, for he successfully straightened out the company in short order and even turned it into the most profitable company under Sullivan Group. The reason for his diligence was none other than to have Josephine fall for him, but when he learned that she was associating with Jared, who had been to prison, he had a drastic change of heart. He then vowed to snatch her back from Jared. Since Jared had come to the company for an interview, he naturally had to seize that opportunity. As long as the man remained there, he had thousands of ways to have him back down, while also sowing discord between him and Josephine. This is strange. Zane frowned, but he didn't dare go against the general manager when he was merely a department manager. Hence, he said to Jared, "Go and get the onboarding procedures done. I'll send someone over to give you a tour later." He didn't dare pick trouble with him for the time being, as he was uncertain about the man's exact association with Xavier. Jared was likewise baffled. "I don't understand why that man known as Mr. Jennings wanted to employ me, but he seemed to know me. Could it be that Josephine learned that I was coming to her company for an interview and purposely told him to keep an eye out for me?" As he pondered upon that with a frown, he followed the young lady in the office out to complete the onboarding procedures. "Damn, it turned out that you're an ex-convict. How unlucky of me to have chatted with you for such a long time. What a bummer. Someone like you will never get the job." Right after stepping out the door, the bespectacled man earlier tore into Jared. Nonetheless, Jared merely cast him an airy glance. "I initially felt that he was pretty decent, but I never thought that he's also the kind of person who looks down on others." "Please come with me, Mr. Chance. An ID card is required for the onboarding procedures. Do you have it with you?" The young lady who walked out with Jared asked the latter. "Yes, I do." Jared handed his ID card to her and flashed her a grateful smile. He knew that she asked that on purpose, and her words were actually meant for that young man. Sure enough, the young man's eyes went wide when he heard that Jared passed the interview, and disbelief showed on his face. However, Jared ignored him, merely snorting before leaving with the young lady. While he was handling the onboarding procedures, Maria questioned Zane furiously in the manager's office of the sales department. "What's wrong with you? Didn't you say that you're going to fail him? Now that he's gotten a job here, I'm going to be doomed. My father will definitely order me to give him a ride every day." "That's not my fault. He is somehow associated with Mr. Jennings. It was Mr. Jennings who employed him directly, so I can't do anything about it," Zane retorted in chagrin. Hello, my beloved listeners. I hope you're all enjoying the series and as always excited for next episodes. You are the reason we do this and we put all this together. Just a small favor though, please like and subscribe and keep on watching. This is the best and the most visual form of support we ask. Your support means a lot to us, and it keeps us keep the momentum and keep going further. Thank you very much. See you on the next episode.